What's going on, Average Joes? Today, I want to talk about my own fantasy entry points, specifically in regards to the subgenre that they are under. So, hello, everyone out there. I am Joe, and this is my channel. I like to talk about fantasy books, sci-fi, nonfiction, some mystery thrillers, and that whole rigmarole. I know I don't do that much of a great job introing my channel sometimes for anybody that's new out there, but thanks for checking out my videos. And today I want to talk about places to start in fantasy or when considering specific subgenres. What I want to talk about today are where to start in fantasy in regards to specific subgenres and plot ideas. And then what I mean by that are in fantasy and sci-fi. And on this list, it's going to be fantasy and sci-fi because they're pretty much grouped together. And this is like a if you like this, if you're looking for something like this, if you're looking for something in this realm, in this world with this theme, then this would be a great uh, fantasy book for you to read, or a fantasy or sci-fi book for you to read. And I know a lot of people have their own fantasy entry points, whether it's adult entry points, YA entry points, sci-fi entry points, new reader books, things like that. But I wanted to make this specific to what a somebody might like in a subgenre sense, and that'll make sense as I go through my list. So this is just my recommendations of what I have liked and what I have found in these specific themes or these specific subgenres under fantasy and sci-fi. I'm also very thankful for a recent shout out that I got from Jolene Reeds. And she remarked on there that she likes some of my list videos. So I had to make another list video. And this one I was already brainstorming and halfway through anyway. So decided why not push it out. So, first, for subgenres in the fantasy and sci fi realm, I want to talk about mystery. So, if you like mystery books, mystery series, mystery shows, movies, if you like the whole mystery thing or want something mysterious, but also in the fantasy and sci fi world, I would recommend The Rook by. I would recommend The Rook. I've talked about this a few times on my channel. It's on my standalone and some other ones. It is such a good read because you'll be hooked into the mystery from the synopsis, from the first sentence, whatever the setup is. She wakes up, the main protagonist wakes up surrounded by dead bodies. She doesn't know who she is. It's raining, but she has a letter written to herself by herself. So that's the startup of the premise of the book, and then she's going through reading letters to herself from herself, assuming the role that she already had in life and her job, acting like nothing's wrong. And it's got some funny to it. There's a lot of magic. It takes place in London, so it is a urban fantasy as well. So it's a world you already know, and the mystery will definitely keep you going and to find out why that happened to her and what else is going on. Next, for history, if you do like history, if you're a history buff or you read some historical fictions before, but you want to dabble into fantasy, Saxon Saga would be a big one that I would recommend. I think that's a little closer to historical fiction, but Saxon Saga for sure. It is about Danes and Englishmen and Scots and just that whole UK islands and people fighting and killing each other for several books. And it's very good. And Saxon Saga, if you didn't know, this is actually the Last Kingdom show on Netflix. So if you've watched that and want to get into the books, but another one for history would be Time Waves. This one I mentioned in the past as well, and the setup for this is it is in the future, and in the future they are somebody invented time travel. Time travel is now privatizing like a contracting business to where you can hire this group who controls time travel to go back in time and preserve some sort of artifact or something that has been lost, whether it's a book, a painting, a statue, something that has now in the future been destroyed. They will go back in time and steal it for you, get it for you, and then bring it back to the future. And it costs a whole lot of money to do that, but that is the setup of it. So these people who travel in time go through classes and training on how to blend in each time period, what the language is like, what the attire is, what the protocol is, all of those things, and they act like they're from that time period. So they go back and do that. And in the first book, they go to 1920s or 30s Paris, something like that, early 1900s Paris, and they're trying to just to steal a book. I'm forgetting who it was, but it's a very famous author that it was never released. It was only talked about, but they're trying to steal his manuscript for that and assuming their roles. So this is very good, and they do some other time travel in other ones. There's a fourth book out as well. Next, war. If you like war, if you want action, if you just want some battles, some battle scenes, some fighting, and that's basically what you want high octane action, lots of battles, then I'm going to go with Rage of Dragons for this one. It has a ton of action. The main protagonist is basically on a revenge war path to try and avenge someone, and they play war games as well. They're skirmishes and all these things, and there's a lot of training in it, and it's just about going through this warrior type training and battle scenarios and um, uh, war games, and then it leads into an actual war and battles and real action. I haven't moved on to Fire's Vengeance, but I've heard it's a lot of the same as well. Next one, magic. So this one you can go a lot of different directions, whether it's just magic system, whether it's just magical settings, and just if you want some magic, something that heavily relies on or magic is heavily influenced in the stories in the books that you want to feel the magic and just have something like that. Mistborn is always a popular one that comes up because the magic system is so in depth. It is so deep and it grows as you continue on with the series. It is probably one of the best magic systems in all of fantasy. So it is so in depth and very interesting to read about. But another one I'm going to go with this is a middle grade actually, and much like how Harry Potter is the setting is so ingrained into those books and there is magic part of it. Keepers of the Lost is another middle grade where the setting is great, but there's so much magic to it as well. And there's magical creatures, and people have all these different kinds of abilities. And the more books you go into, the more abilities are talked about and revealed, and more crazy things happen, and the world expands more. And like I said, it is middle grade, but it is still very magical in nature. Philosophy. Now, this one is when I say philosophy, I just mean books that might make you think a little bit more, or ones that you like to have a little bit that are a little bit slower and are have maybe deeper meanings, deeper things to think about. And I'm gonna go with Dune on this. And although Dune was only like a 4 out of 5 for me, because I'm not one for philosophical type deep thinking reads, and it's still fantastic, and everybody absolutely loves it. And it is technically sci-fi, but it's going to feel more fantasy than sci-fi. It's just technically sci-fi. So I would definitely recommend Dune. Even during the slower parts of the book, I was still into it. I was very into the story, but I think Dune would be really good because I've heard a lot of people talk about the kind of deeper meanings that they get from it. Next one is humor. I love humor and banter and wittiness in my books. I've done mentioned it a lot. I've had an entire video about friendship as well, and those two of the books that are the two that I'm going to recommend are on that friendship list, and that is The Great Coats and Kings of the Wild. I say both of these because they are very funny at moments, and the stories are great. They are very adult in nature, but it's still very funny to read along with these. And it's just a group of friends or this group that stays together and goes through all these this action, this quest. And just think about you and your close group of friends and buddies and drop them into a fantasy type setting with lots of action and either combat and a quest type setting. But it's you and your friends still. So you're still going to give each other a hard time. You're still going to um, make fun of each other, do all that sort of thing. And that's what happens here is that they're such close groups of friends that you still have that genuine camaraderie, in which you get a lot of humor out of. Next one's going to be on the dark or horror side. Now, I don't really read any horror, so it's just going to be on the dark side, whether it's a grimdark, if you want to dip your toes into grimdark, or you like some other darker themed shows. I'm going to go with First Law, and I know this gets recommended a ton in general. And I haven't seen many on any fantasy intros or uh, adult fantasy introductions, but I'm having it here um, for the dark subgenre category because it's not a hard book to follow. It's not a hard series to follow. The plot, it's there. It has a plot. It's not complicated or complex. The world, not complicated or complex. There's not really a magic system. There's a little bit here and there that you get sprinkled in, but it's pretty simple. It's all about the characters and following the characters. And there are dark moments. So if you like dark and goriness, then this might be one for you. It's not um, my favorite grimdark as far as it goes. It's on the lower end of the grimdark scale, and that's also why I recommend it, because it's not like going to be super grimdark. You have to put the book down and take a break because of some of the dark moments. Now there's still some in here and plenty of gore, but it's still on the lower end of grimdark in my opinion, from what I've read. So I think this would be a great entry into dark and grimdark because it's not very complicated. You're not going to get you're going to get a hold of the plot in the world and the characters pretty fast, and it's not on the super dark side. Politics. Now, politics can be a lot of fun in books, and it can be hit or miss because sometimes if you're a little too slow with your politics, then you might lose a reader. Because a lot of times with politics, it's slow burn and behind the curtain types of things. And A Song of Ice and Fire is definitely 100% one of the top politics type books, but they might be a little bit more advanced for some. So I'm going to say The Queen's Thief. This one is fantastic because there's a lot of clever plotting going on. And for the first three quarters of the entire book, you might think you know what's going to happen and what's going on. But then the last quarter, the last 20% of the book, there's a lot of reveals. And then you see all the strings that are connected and how they all connected. And you're going, oh my God, I totally missed that. And it's kind of like watching a chess match unfold. The main protagonist is very clever, and then even like further on in the series, you get views from that same protagonist, but from somebody else's eyes and how the plotting works. So I think that is a fantastic entry. It is the books aren't very long. It's a 6 book series, but they're not very long. They'll go quick, and they're really good. Next one, fairy tale. If you like fairy tales or want some sort of fairy tale type setting, I have a couple of them here, and they are all different in their own right. So, Eyes of the Dragon, for one, that is a Stephen King book. I've really enjoyed it. Some people, I guess more of the Stephen King truthers, might have it lower on their list. I really enjoyed it. It is a fairy tale written by Stephen King. That's basically what it is. It is in the probably teen age range on reading, so not like a little kid fairy tale. But it's good, it is clever, and it's you're gonna feel like a fairy tale story because it has that narrator um, type a feel of them telling you what's going on. Cinder is a really cool fairy tale series. It's a 3 book series, 4 if you count the prequel novella thing, and it is a sci-fi setting that has a retelling of Cinderella, Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, um, and a couple of those are in there, and all of those types of elements with the those classic fairy tale settings, they're all in there, and it's in a sci-fi futuristic setting, and it's done really well. I really enjoyed it. It is technically YA, but I liked it a lot, and it was enough that my wife and I both liked it about equal parts for different reasons. She likes the fairy tale type stuff. I like more of the sci-fi settings, a little bit cyberpunky as well. And that fusion together was done really, really well. I think is it's really good. It was pretty popular on BookTube, but 2 years ago or so. That's about when I read it, I think. But I think it is fantastic. Urban fantasy. Now, for this might be best for new people into fantasy in general because there's not really much world building to do because it's our world. Now, I mentioned earlier the Rook is urban fantasy, and that's because it takes place in London. The other one I'm going to recommend would be Dresden Files, and it is fantastic. And what also makes Dresden Files so good is that it's episodic in nature. And what I mean by that is each book is its own self-contained plot and story that you can just read one, put it, and then take a break, come back whenever you want, and come to the next. Because there is, I think, 17 books out now, and it's going to go to 25. But they're so easy to just throw into whatever you're reading. And it's about a wizard detective in Chicago and his life. And it's very, very good. And as you go along further into the series, the world and the characters get much more depth and get bigger, but you can still just do one and then put the series down for a while, then pick another one up. So Dresden Files is definitely a top recommend for newer fantasy in the urban space. One is Space Battles. This one is like super specific and almost very niche. And this is, I'm going to say, Legacy Fleet is a series that it's basically just has space battles. Um, there's not a whole lot of character or world building in this. It is space battles, and it's like a kind of like Rage of Dragons is all about the war games. This one is just all about space battles and how this old clunker of a ship is taking on this newer alien race that has supreme technology, and then how his tactics are winning these battles and that sort of setup. So they're just like really on the surface level, simple, fast reads that are great to read. The narration was also very good. That's how I consume this series. So on the very surface level, Red Rising would also be a decent one for space battles. Red Rising could also be a good one for politics. So it could fit into multiple. And then the last one is if you just want some sort of classic fantasy. If you've watched Lord of the Rings and say, you know what, I want some sword and sorcery. I like dwarves. I want some elves, that kind of thing. I'm going to say Rhaenyra. Fantastic book series. It also has some humor to it. The camaraderie between the two main characters is fantastic. They go on their quest. It is very well written, very well done, and there's a ton of books. So you can either start with Rhaenyra Revelations or Rhaenyra Chronicles. It doesn't matter which. Revelations was read first, but Chronicles was chronologically first. It doesn't really matter. He wrote it so that you can do either one. I've only read Revelations. I own Chronicles, but haven't gotten there yet. So classic, as far as that goes, would be Rhaenyra. So I'm interested to know what some of your recommendations are for some of these categories. What are some ones you would recommend for magic, for war, for history, for mystery, whatever it is? Shout out in down in the comments about what you might pick or what you might like on this list or what you might disagree with. Whatever, anything goes. But put it down in the comments and we'll chat about this later.